Vamos a pasar directamente a próxima sesión y gostaria de convidar ao Sergio Habib, o presidente de JAC Motors, aqui para uma entrevista. Hello, good to see you. Are we going to speak in English? Or?
Yeah, we can speak in English.
Okay. Okay. Um, Sergio Habib, thank you very much for coming today. You've said you're happy to speak in English. You're a Brazilian who has had the ousadia, the daring, to try and sell cheap cars in Brazil. Tell us about it, and tell us about your experiences doing that and what they say about attitudes to innovation in this country.
Well, Brazilians are open to new products. The Brazilian customer is not conservative. And there is two reasons for that. One is that by nature, Brazil is an open, we are very open to novelties, to new products and everything. The second is that 10 years ago, the Brazilian car market was 1.4 million cars. And now we have a 3.5 million car market, bigger than Germany. So we have 2 million people buying cars in Brazil that 10 years ago would take a bus or buy a very old used car. So these new consumers, for them, they don't care a lot about the brand they will buy. So in the world, there are 2 countries, 3 now, with very low fidelity when they buy a new car: China, Brazil, and India. And the main reason for this very low fidelity is that there is a lot of new customers buying cars that 10 years ago didn't buy cars. So these guys, and they are very strong in the northeast of Brazil, because the Brazilian car market doesn't grow the same way. Brazilian car market has more than double from 1.4 to 3.5 million cars in the last 10 years. But in the big cities, the growth of the market is much smaller. São Paulo, in the same period, grew 40%. So in the northeast of Brazil, in the agricultural regions of Brazil, you have a lot of new people buying cars, and they are not very concerned about if the brand has 50 or 100 years in history. It's different in Europe, and it's different in America. In America, the fidelity of a consumer is around 30%. In Europe, it's more than 50. So a new brand in Europe, in terms of cars, is very difficult to grow. In America, it's easier. In Brazil or China or India, it's much, much easier.
So, I mean, JAC Motors, or the Chinese car industry, is in some ways an example of frugal innovation, no? Perhaps. But it also benefits, obviously, from cheaper labor costs and from scale. Do you think there are lessons from JAC Motors and from other Chinese car manufacturers that the car industry in Brazil should be learning and isn't learning?
I don't know if the Brazilian industry isn't learning. What I know is that the Chinese car manufacturers, they have lower costs than traditional manufacturers. And it's not just labor. This is not true. The labor in Chinese car manufacture in Shanghai or close to Beijing is not very far from the cost of labor in Mexico, for instance. What happened is that Chinese companies are very frugal. They are very lean companies. Their engineers work longer hours than in Europe, principally in Europe, and there is no bureaucracy. the bureaucracy in Chinese car manufacturers is, I mean, I know very well the car manufacturers around the world. There are huge companies with lots of layers, lots of overheads. And these people, when you put overhead, they have to justify they exist. So they give more work to more people and more meetings, and more work and more meetings.
Yeah, we know about it, I think.
So what happened is sometimes we say that car companies, they are companies that kill a lot of trees because they use a lot of paper, and sometimes they sell a car. So Chinese companies are very fast and has very, very low bureaucracy. And I think this is a new way to make cars. And I think that the traditional manufacturers will have to adapt.
Do you see signs of them adapting here in Brazil?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
And there is another thing also, is that there is two sides of the coin when you have low bureaucracy. Is that you change very fast, but sometimes you change too fast. Because sometimes you change things in the car without proper testing. So it's difficult to balance the right speed at which you can make innovation and not make innovation in a product like a car. But I don't see it happening in Brazil.
Right. The part of the reaction, as I understand it here, well, was to put rather high tariffs on your cars at the request, the government acting at the request of the incumbent car manufacturers here. You are going to build a factory here, right?
Yeah, we were going to build a factory before the tax increase.
Right.
We are not building a factory because of the tax increase. This is absolutely fails. Right. Brazil is a big market. China is very far. We still have 35% duty tax plus freight, which is a 50% protection on a non-expensive car. And you have to produce cars where you sell them. So we were going to do the factory anyway. And as a matter of fact, it didn't even increase the speed, because the car we are going to launch in Brazil is a new car that doesn't exist in China. So in terms of investing in our country, this new regulation didn't change anything.
And do you think you're going to be able to reproduce here in Brazil the kind of lean approach and low-cost approach, frugal approach that there is in China?
Yeah, the advantage in a new company is that a new company always, when it's born, it's lean. Problem is you get fat with age, like us.
It happens to us.
So what happens is when we are young, we are lean. So absolutely, yes, in the beginning, I'm sure we will be very lean. We'll have to make lots of efforts to keep lean as time goes on.
I mean, more broadly, when people in Brazil or around the world think about how to compete with China, and one of the worries is the sense that there's no intellectual property protection in China, and that makes it very difficult. I mean, the Chinese have been, experts at ruthlessly copying other people's patented ideas, no? And that makes life very hard. And that in that sense, they're breaking the rules of world trade. I mean, how do you see that?
Well, first of all manufacturers buy cars from all the brands and dismantle them. Absolutely all. Mercedes, BMW, Audi, Volkswagen, General Motors. Every time a competitor launches a car, they buy it and they dismantle it completely to understand how the car is done. Because you don't have to invent everything when you launch a new car. And sometimes you have good ideas in one place and good ideas in another place. So first of all manufacturers see what their competitors are doing. Second, China has still a very young industry. So in the beginning, it's normal that you copy because you don't have technology yet. But one thing is happening in China. China is forming 600,000 engineers every year against 120 in the States and 30,000 in France. China is already the third country in patents after Japan and America. And this will change very fast. And there is another thing also, is because of the Cultural Revolution, it's very difficult to find good 50 years old engineers in China. In China, there is a barrier. I go to China every month. There is a barrier. People in China, they speak English if they are under 30. Very difficult to find a 60-year-old Chinese speaking English, because what happened is that 30 years ago, in the 70s, you couldn't go to school. It was forbidden. They closed a lot of universities in the 60s and everything. So when you go to visit Chinese factories and engineers, they are all very, very young. The average age in JAC has 4,000 engineers. The average age is 29. The boss is 42. And after 45, you don't see people with gray hair in China in research centers. What happened is that this generation will grow older, and then you'll see a lot of innovation in China because they work very hard. They are very well educated. Kids go to school from 8 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock at night. Kids have night school. You go to small schools in the interior of China. The kids go to school from 8 to noon, from 2 to 5. They go home, they have dinner, they go back to school from 7 to 9:30. So I entered in a Chinese school in the interior of China, 12 years old kids. They were having Shakespeare in English. You don't have that in Brazil. I don't know if you have it in England, but you don't have it in Brazil. 12 years old.
We used to have it in England.
So this will change. I think this will change.
So when you look at Brazil through Chinese eyes, what do you see?
Brazil now is using a very protectionist attitude. Brazil says the Brazilian consumer market belongs to us. It's our patrimony.
Patrimony, yeah.
Yeah, it's our
heritage.
patrimony.
Yeah.
We have to protect it and everything. The problem is, usually when you protect someone, and it's true for a kid, it doesn't grow wealthy.
Yeah.
Because protection, we learn by competing with each other. If I'm the only man in the world, why will I take care of my wife? She doesn't have a choice. So it's the same thing with competition. If you cut competition, you lose innovation. Why spend in innovation if I'm protected in my country? The new automotive regulation in Brazil obliges you to, if you want to sell cars in Brazil, you have to make them in Brazil. You practically can't import. And you have to have a 50, 60% local content. The problem is you have some components, and it's quite a lot, that are much less expensive in Korea or Japan or Germany, fuel pumps, or China. And as you have to buy everything in Brazil, put yourself in the place of a Brazilian supplier, which is not Brazilian. 70% are transnational companies. Do you think they will make innovation, and do you think they will do everything to cut costs if they know that all the brands have to buy fuel pumps from them? I don't think so. So we'll end up having cars that we can sell in Brazil because it's protected and it's a big market. It will go to 4 or 5 million cars, but absolutely impossible to sell a Brazilian car abroad. In 2, 3, 4 years, we won't be able to export cars because the cost of producing a car in Brazil will be more expensive because we have to put a lot of local content in the cars. This is not good for cost, it's not good for innovation, it's not good for competition.
So the way to compete with China is actually to open up, not to protect.
You have to open, you can't open, we have a strong currency, so you can't open completely. It's very difficult to find the right protection. You have to protect a little bit, not too much. And you have to tell people, this is going to go down in the future. So you have to do something about it. And now what we have is the contrary. The government is saying it will get worse. You will have to put more local content in your cars in the future. So I would say that suppliers are in a very good situation because we have to buy everything in Brazil.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Sergio. I think in the interests of gender equality, I think I ought to point out that all of us men ought to think there's only one Brazilian woman in the world. But thank you very much indeed for giving us that very refreshing, those very refreshing ideas that there are ways to compete with China. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.